Hello and welcome to this News Unlock special where our focus is shifting to the United States of America that goes out to vote in what is being seen as a historic election. We take a look at today the Indian American voter, one of the most rapidly growing immigrant groups in the United States. The Indian American population currently stands at over 4.16 million, out of which around 1.9 million are eligible voters. That's less than 1% of the voter base. But the Indian American demography is in an increasing powerful bloc in the United States, thinly spread but becoming more and more influential in its way. And for both the Republicans of Donald Trump and the Democrats of Joe Biden, they remain a valuable campaign contributor and potential mobilizers. We'll be joined by special guests from the United States from both sides who will decode the community's political stance in this major US presidential election. But first, let's take a look at this special report on the Indian American factor in the US elections.
Indian Americans are being seen as a crucial vote bank in the 2020 race to the White House. Both Republicans and Democrats are trying to woo their support.
Politicians are afraid to use the word union.
While an earlier survey had reported a slight shift of the community to the Republican quarter, a more recent one says they're back in the Democrat fold. The survey of 936 Indian American citizens suggests that the support of Indian Americans for the Democratic Party continues. According to the survey, 72% of registered voters are behind Democrat candidate Joe Biden compared to 22% for President Donald Trump. Biden's running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, a woman of Indian and African descent, is certainly mobilizing voters for the Democrat ticket. The strong Indian American support for the Democrats is driven by core issues like healthcare and the economy. The survey found 39% of Indian Americans said the Democrats were better at managing Indo-US relations, while only 18% said Republicans fared better. It's significant that 26% said there was no difference, while 16% said they didn't know. US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's bonhomie seem to have lost its sheen with the community. The survey counters the recent narrative that the strong Trump-Modi friendship and criticism of Modi's policies by some Democrats, including Harris, was driving Indian Americans to the Republican Party in significant numbers.
We will speak truths.
The survey establishes, perhaps for the first time, that it's not right-wing Hindus who are Trump's most ardent admirers, but Christian Indian Americans. Among Trump's Indian American supporters, 45% are Christian, 22% Hindu, and 10% Muslim. Presently, out of the 4.1 million Indian population in America, only 2.62 million are citizens, and the eligible voting population stands at 1.9 million, or under 1% of the total US voters.
The race for America. Where do the Indian Americans stand? I'm joined by special guests. Joining me now is Chanda Prabhu. She's Savitex founder, a volunteer organization that supports the Democrats. Ajay Jain Bhuturia is member, National Finance Committee and part of the Biden team. Also a Silicon Valley-based tech entrepreneur, author and national community leader. I'm also joined by Puneet Ahluwalia, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Virginia. He's a Republican. And Sridhar Chittilaria is member Indian Voices for Trump's advisory board, himself also a venture capitalist and author. Appreciate all of you joining us here on the news today. Good to have all of you. And let's get that question clear. Who do a majority of the Indian American support? Why don't you start, Chanda, first? Because the study of the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies says 72% of registered voters behind Joe Biden compared to 22% for President Trump. Is that a rough indication of the support, 3:1?
Absolutely. We've been boots on the ground over the last 4 years. Our organization started after the 2016 election results, and we have seen on the ground that we are considerably, by far, more leaning toward the Democrat ticket. We've seen this all along. I think the values that we espouse as Indian Americans align with those of the Democratic Party, but we've seen it firsthand. And we think we're going to have a very successful election based on the work that we've been doing on the ground and hearing what people are saying.
I'll come back to where the result is going, but Puneet Ahluwalia, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Virginia, Republican, do you agree that traditionally the perception was Indian Americans strongly Democratic? Is that changing? Are there lines in the sand that suggest things are changing on the ground, Puneet?
Yes, dramatically. I believe that there has been a shift. A large shift has come by the policies of the Democratic leadership. The rioting, the looting has really caused a lot of concern, defunding of police, and then the personal dynamics between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi has also made a huge mark. So I believe there is a shift, and there is a serious concern, and in the successful Indian American community, which is most likely going to be targeted for the success they have achieved. So I feel that's also one reason that's pushing the Indian Americans to go out and vote, either Republican or Democrat. But we have, the ones I've spoken to, still strongly believe that there is a major shift towards the Republican Party.
Ajay Jain, Bhuturia, are we seeing, particularly in the age where the Republicans under Trump have reached out to the Modi administration, or we've had large-scale events, certainly both in Ahmedabad and earlier in Houston last year, that seem to suggest that the Republicans and the Indian government have found a new form of romance. Does that, in a way, make Democrats perhaps no longer take the Indian American vote for granted?
Basically, what is happening is that Indian America understands that Donald Trump has done nothing to further advance the relationship between India and US beyond photo opportunities, using photo opportunities with the friendship of Prime Minister Modi. He goes on air in the second debate calling India is filthy. In the first debate saying India is coronavirus numbers, COVID numbers are lies. A friend doesn't treat a friend like this, and this is not how foreign policy is defined. So Indians understand this completely. And in last, he has suspended H-1 visas. He has created the backlog for the green card, which is up to 70 to 80 years now. And here, there has been no substantial trade deals in the 47 months of Trump administration. Biden, on the other hand, has clearly said that he's going to increase the H-1 quota, his H-1 visa, he's going to revive the H-1 program, he's going to streamline the green card process in next 100 days of his first 100 days of his administration. He's going to stand with India against the aggression of China. He is against the cross-border terrorism into India of any kind. He is supporting a permanent seat for United Nations Security Council for India, and his values align with the values of Indian, which is respecting our elders, duty to family, and treating people with respect and dignity, self-discipline, service, and hard work. These values Biden had, inherited from his Irish ancestors, and that's what makes him as a son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, and a lifelong public servant. And that is what connects Indian Americans with Biden. And Kamala Harris is another pride moment for that. She will be the first who has Indo origin.
Let me turn to the Kamala Harris point that you just made, and I want to take that to you, Sridhar Chitalia. You're a member of Indian Voices for Trump Advisory Board. The fact is that we have a ticket for the first time where you have a candidate as Vice President Kamala Harris who is of Indian American origin. I know that she's also, in a sense, focused on the fact that she represents the Afro-Caribbean community as well. But her mother was from Chennai. Does that make a big difference? Is Kamala Harris one reason possibly why a lot of Indian Americans may be potentially attracted to the Biden-Harris ticket?
I don't think so, sir. I think we have done our own surveys amongst the Indian American communities. The 6 themes that stand out stand beyond the persona of Kamala Harris. I think the first and foremost is that, Trump is the only president who has stood by India on several issues, one against China. Number two, against not interfering in the internal policies. My earlier speaker made a statement, which is namely to say nothing much has been achieved by way of bilateral trade agreements. In fact, nothing has been achieved under the bilateral trade agreements between the years Biden has held relative to what Trump has achieved, which is $159 billion, including strategic on the energy side. The point that I'm trying to make is this is beyond the persona of Kamala Harris. In fact, on the contrary, Kamala Harris wanted to intervene in a domestic issue and summon the External Affairs Minister, along with her colleagues, to the House to do an inquiry, which the Honorable Minister declined. So to me, Kamala Harris is no factor as far as it is being made a factor, but we don't think so based on our research.
Interesting that you're suggesting that, because Chanda Prabhu, traditionally there's a belief that the Democrats tend to be harsher on India when it comes to human rights, when it comes to Kashmir. Republicans, to that extent, according to a certain view, are much more conscious of Indian concerns on sensitive issues like Kashmir. Do you go along with that, or is there a bipartisan consensus now on Capitol Hill when it comes to critical issues that of security that concern India at the moment?
Well, I have to admit that I am boots on the ground with my people in the state of Texas, and what concerns us is what's happening in the United States. When we are talking to people about, why we're voting for the Democratic Party, it always comes back to what we're doing in our country and what is in the best interest for the health of our country. So I think that's where we keep bringing the issues back to why we're voting, because that's what we're talking about today, is how we're voting. Our base is going to be voting on the issues that are facing our country, which is going to be climate change, which is going to be including taxes, the environment, and those things that affect the people here.
So you're saying that the Indian American is not looking at which administration is more favorable to an Indian government. They're looking at issues which are similar to other Americans, that the Indian American community should not be seen as a distinct entity. Am I correct?
Correct. I mean, we have a wide variety of voters. We have a lot of people that are very loyal to India, very loyal to Modi, but are not going to be voting for Trump. They are going to be voting for Joe Biden. And there are lots of great instances where we think that they're very supportive of having a relationship with India, but making those bigger changes, making sure that they have a voice at the United Nations, making sure that they're part of the Paris climate changes. Those are the things that really matter to this country. How are we including India in the broad stage for the entire world? So those are the things that we're going to be talking about on the ground, which we have been. And I think we've been really successful in letting our community know that we have a holistic approach to our voters.
There is the issue, Puneet Ahluwalia, which is a critical issue in this election, which is race. There's a sense, particularly post the Black Lives Matter, that the issues of race and Donald Trump's views on that are antithetical to a more inclusive society. Does that become a factor for the Indian American community, Puneet Ahluwalia? You're a candidate from the Republican Party for Lieutenant Governor in Virginia, that there's a sense that people, non-whites, feel more and more strongly that Trump doesn't stand for an inclusive America.
I disagree with that completely. In fact, it's the Democratic narrative to keep pinning his support in the white racist party. But I'm a proud Republican for the last 20 years. The Democrats keep feeding this systemic racism that exists. Now, I think if we are a very individualistic party, which means that if you want to work hard and succeed, you can. And then you've seen the failed policies of Vice President Biden for being in office for 47 years, hasn't accomplished anything. And I do want to come to the point, Indians are one of the most smartest, successful community. They're going to vote what's important to them and the future of their kids. So if you want safe, secure society and you want less taxes, not what Biden is going to come 4 billion taxes on people in terms of, well, anybody making over $400,000 is not going to be impacted, or less than that would not be impacted. But trust me, the Democrats have a way of pinning few taxes, like 50 cents increase in Virginia on fuel tax. That impacts all families. That takes away daycare. That takes away food for the families and kids and higher education for kids. So the policies of the Democrats are predominantly a failed policy of moving towards socialism, which means big government, larger control. At the same time, this Green New Deal, somehow the other, we Republicans are labeled that we don't care about climate change. We do. We are conservatives. We believe in leaving the world a better place than what it is, what we found it to be. And we have looked and invested in innovation, which President Trump has done, including planting of trees and safeguarding areas where we should not be doing environmental impact. But coming back to the point that you cannot take away your success of your economy based on gas and fuel, which is there. We should look into other alternate energies, but at the same time, you shouldn't compromise your successful growing economy of the United States, which helps entire world, including India.
You know, let me, since we are speaking about also energy issues, and clean air is a major issue in this election, as is climate change. Shridhar Chitalia, before I come to you, you're a member of Indian Voices for Trump. Let's listen into that controversial remark that Donald Trump made in the presidential debate about India, and I'll get you to respond to it. Listen in.
Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great service. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord.
Shridhar Chitalia, you know, is Donald Trump someone at the end of the day who just doesn't understand countries like India? At the end of the day, you know, contemptuous at one level of India. India for him is little more than a place to do business in. And he didn't even give us a trade deal at the end of the day.
Well, here's the story. Now, first on the specific comment that you made, or alluding to even my previous speaker, he's talking about the filthiness of the air. He's not about the filthiness of the people. Consistent, he and Don Trump Jr. and his team have talked about the warmth and strong friendship that they have enjoyed with India and Indian people, and the respect that he has for Indian people.
But what has he given us? Sorry to press you. What has he given us for all that warmth in the last 5 years? We wanted a major trade deal. We didn't even get it with the United States. Well,
you know, what was your bilateral trade pre-Trump and post-Trump? Today, India has a bilateral trade with $150+ billion. It is the strategic energy country today. Shift from the traditional Middle East or West Asia. It is now the significant player in the Quad on the security. It has got full support against China in the northern border. Now they have signed the Baker Agreement, where India will have access to all strategic satellite stuff. On the investment side, the direct investments into India has grown from $23 billion to $70+ billion during this particular period. There's a lot of cooperation that is happening on the bilateral side on the defense and establishments. There is also cooperation between the two countries on the technology side. To say what has he done, this is the numbers which tell the story on the bilateral side.
You know, let me, you know, put it, I'll actually turn for a moment to Ajay Jain Bhuturia, because you are a supporter of the Democrats. And the fact is, Donald Trump has been much tougher on China. And as we saw with the visit of the US Defense Secretary last week to the country, the Trump administration appears willing to take on China, wants India to be part of strategic alliances that encircle China. To that extent, the approach of the Republicans to China could work to India's advantage. Don't you agree?
Rajdeep, Biden and Kamala Harris best understands the Indian community and India-US relationship. Obama and Biden laid the foundation for $500 billion trade deal for next 10 years, and Biden and Harris are going to grow on it. China, as of now, any Republican or Democrat government comes, India and US are going to be natural allies for the national security of their own countries as well as the world, and they will tackle China both together. And Biden has constantly says that he's is going to stand with India against the aggression of China. But beyond that, these elections are not fought on foreign policy. India's most important ally of U.S. and is going to continue a natural partner, which Biden has said many times. But look at the domestic issues which the Indo-Americans are facing. There's a rising hate crimes in mandir, masjid, temple, gurudwaras, and churches. There is small businesses of thousands of small businesses has been shut down because of the mismanagement of COVID crisis by Donald Trump, and there are hundreds, thousands or more going to shut down, which belongs to, many of them belong to South Asian community. And because of this huge impact, and then he's going to repeal Obamacare, which provides health care during this time of crisis to thousands of Indo-Americans and South Asians and people, everyone. And all this amounts to say that.
Can I stop you for a moment? Because, you know, one of the interesting things that this survey of John Hopkins established is that perhaps for the first time, it's not right-wing Hindus who are Trump's most ardent admirers, but Christian Indian Americans. Among Trump's Indian American supporters, 45% were Christian, 22% Hindu, and 10% Muslim. Now, Puneet Ahluwalia, there are those who feel that, that Donald Trump, whether it's with H-1B visas, or whether it is in general his attitude towards non-whites becomes a potentially troubling issue. Do you believe that there are divisions therefore within the American community that Donald Trump is actually trying to tap into? And is it more about class than it is about religion? That the more affluent you are in America today, the more likely you are to vote for a Trump than you are if you are less affluent? Is it about income or is it about religion?
Well, it's all about being proud American, how you assimilated yourself in the American society. Look, what President Trump did is he gave job opportunities for people who have not graduated from school and colleges. And that's a very big thing. It's bringing people into the workforce. So that nothing had to do with the dollars and cents or the money you have. It's basically creating more jobs. He's a business person. He's more of a person who's a doer, more as the Democrats are more about talking. And that's what it is. There'll be this deal, that deal after they come into power. Well, you have been in power for 47 years, and then he was vice president for 8 years. You haven't done anything. But I do want to touch upon a very important issue, the climate change issue. That was Obama's big thing. He wanted to give $700 million of taxpayers, U.S. taxpayers' money into a green climate fund, which was to be funded by our taxpayers' money, and give it to countries who will not abide by the climate change issue till 2030. So why do you want to take our tax money, hamper our growth and success, and then go do the climate change deal, climate deal?
No, you don't agree, Sridhar Chitalya, that there is a gap, that this is income divide, that the more affluent you are, the more likely you are to vote for Donald Trump, the less you are, the more you're worried about how his policies will affect you? That the divisions in American society also reflect in the divisions in Indian American voters in that sense?
Well, I don't think so. The data for us proves otherwise, as well as if you actually go to the responsible politics declarations, the people who have contributed to the Trump campaign have come from grassroots level. That applies to the Indian American community as well. Most of the large donors have come from and contributed to Biden. Be it in the Silicon Valley, the top 5 company contributions have gone to Mr. Biden. If you take the Wall Street contributions have gone to Mr. Biden. So Mr. Trump has been advocating, I am for the workers, I am for jobs. That is why I cut the subsidies and brought jobs back to United States. So therefore, most of our support comes from ground level workers who want jobs, low taxes, and an affordable healthcare, not an unaffordable healthcare.
Let me ask you a final word. Chanda Babu, who's going to win? Who you bet? Who's going to win? I mean, there's talk of this election being prolonged, will extend for a week. Trump may not, if he loses, even accept defeat on the 3rd. Who's going to win? Is it going to be a clear win, or it's going to go down to the wire?
It's going to be a clear win for Biden. We have in Texas, we're a predominantly red state. We have Republicans left, right, and center. The moderate Republicans are not voting for Trump this election cycle, and I have talked to them personally. We have Republicans for Biden all over affluent neighborhoods, all over Texas. this is going to be definitely a Biden swing state, and I think we're going to get the 38 electoral votes.
It's going to be.
Yes.
It's going to be a clear Trump win because people who care about the country, they love their country, they're all coming out to vote for President Trump. And you can see from the rallies, you can see from the pictures. Look at Biden rallies. There are hardly any people there. As for Trump,
no, because you're scared that the Republicans are going to come and
you have no ground game.
Okay.
Depressing the vote.
Okay, guys, just for this little moment, we became an Indian TV channel. We've been talking without talking at each other, but I guess a US election is just as polarizing as an Indian election can be. Biden versus Trump, going to be a fascinating election. 48 hours, well, 24 hours to voting. 48 hours before we should get a sense of who is ahead in this race for America. Thank you all very much for joining us. Clearly, we are seeing the evolution of the Indian American community as an intrinsic part of this US election with clear, strong views of their own. Thanks for watching. That was the News Unlocked. News without the noise. Bye for now.
India Today TV, along with 70 other